Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. Get ready for heart-touching stories. Don't forget to subscribe and let's begin.
The snow was falling in thick, silent curtains the night my father told us to leave. I remember the exact moment. I was standing in the doorway of the living room, still wearing my coat because the house had felt strange the second Grandpa Eli and I walked in. The Christmas tree blinked in the corner, red and gold lights pulsing like a nervous heartbeat. My stepmother Diane sat on the edge of the couch with her hands folded in her lap, wearing the kind of expression that belongs on a woman waiting for a verdict. My two half-siblings, twins 8 years old, were nowhere to be seen. That was my first clue that something had been planned. My father stood by the fireplace, one arm resting on the mantel like he was posing for a portrait of a man who had made up his mind. "Marcus," he said, not looking at me but at Grandpa Eli. "I need you both to leave." I was 23. My grandfather was 78. It was Christmas Eve. Let me back up. My name is Daniel Cole. My mother, Rose, died when I was 11, a car accident on a Tuesday morning in February, the kind of death that makes no sense because it was so ordinary. She had been driving to the grocery store. She never came back. After she died, my father, Richard Cole, grieved for approximately 14 months before meeting Diane at a real estate conference in Phoenix. Within 2 years, they were married. Within 3, the twins were born. Within 5, I had become a guest in what used to be my home, invited for holidays out of obligation, given a guest room that smelled like fresh paint and had no pictures on the walls. Grandpa Eli was my mother's father. He was the one constant. While my father rebuilt his life with new furniture and a new family, Grandpa Eli drove an hour and a half every Sunday to take me to breakfast at a diner called Patsy's, where we always ordered the same thing: scrambled eggs for me, 2 poached eggs for him, and 1 shared slice of banana cream pie. He was a quiet man. Gentle. He wore flannel shirts and drove a truck that was older than I was and lived alone in a small house in Millhaven, a town that time seemed to have forgot. He had been a carpenter. He built bookshelves, dining tables, bed frames, practical things, beautiful things. He never talked about money because, as far as I knew, there was never very much of it. That was what I knew. That was what we all thought we knew. Back to Christmas Eve. "Leave," I said. "Dad, it's snowing." "I'm aware of the weather, Daniel." Grandpa Eli put his hand on my arm just lightly, the way he always did when he wanted me to slow down and listen. He was holding a tin of cookies he'd baked himself, wrapped in a red ribbon. He set it gently on the entryway table. "Richard," he said, "what's this about?" My father finally turned from the fireplace. His jaw was tight. He looked older than the last time I'd seen him, grayer at the temples, heavier around the eyes. He looked like a man carrying something. "Know about the will?" he said. The room went very still. Grandpa Eli's expression didn't change. It never did. He had one of those faces carved from long patience, the kind that had seen enough of life to stop being surprised by it. "I see," he said. "Rose's life insurance," my father continued, his voice taking on the clipped, rehearsed quality of a man who had been practicing this speech for weeks. "You intercepted it after she died. The policy she had, the one she took out before we were married, you kept it from me. $300,000, Eli. You kept it from me and you put it in a trust for Daniel that I didn't know about." I stared at my grandfather. He said nothing. "I found out 2 weeks ago," my father said. "My attorney was reviewing Daniel's finances for it doesn't matter why. He found it, a trust account in Daniel's name administered by you." "I wasn't aware of the trust," I said, because I genuinely wasn't. "No," Grandpa Eli said quietly. "You weren't. That was intentional." "Intentional," my father repeated, and the word landed like a stone. "Yes." Grandpa Eli unbuttoned his coat slowly, as if he had all the time in the world. "Rose set it up 6 months before she died. She asked me to administer it and to keep it from you until Daniel was old enough to use it without interference." He looked at my father steadily. "Those were her words, Richard, not mine." My father's face went through several colors. "So she didn't trust me," he said. "She loved you," Grandpa Eli said. "Those aren't the same thing." My father asked us to leave because he was ashamed, and shame in men like Richard Cole presents itself as anger. He couldn't stand the idea that the people in his living room, his dead wife's father and his grown son, knew something about his marriage that he hadn't known. He couldn't stand that Rose had looked ahead and seen a future in which she might not be there, and had quietly, carefully made arrangements without telling him. So he stood by the fireplace and he told us to go, and we went. Grandpa Eli picked up his tin of cookies on the way out. He didn't say another word. I drove because his eyesight wasn't good in the dark anymore. We sat in silence for a few miles, the heater ticking, the windshield wipers pushing snow aside in slow, rhythmic arcs. "Grandpa," I finally said, "what else aren't you telling me?" He looked out the passenger window at the white fields scrolling past. "Pull over at Patsy's," he said. "I could use some pie." Patsy's diner was nearly empty on Christmas Eve, just a couple of truckers at the counter and an old woman reading a paperback in the last booth. We took our usual table. We ordered out of pure habit without looking at the menu. Grandpa Eli placed both of his hands flat on the table. His hands were extraordinary, broad and weathered, mapped with scars from decades of wood and tools. A carpenter's hands. "When your mother was born," he said, "I was 24 years old. I was making furniture in a garage workshop and barely paying the bills. Your grandmother was working as a school secretary." He paused. "We were not wealthy people, Daniel, you know that." I nodded, but I was curious. I was always curious. He smiled faintly at the table. I read everything I could find about money, not to get rich. I didn't care about that, not really. I cared about understanding things, systems, how things worked. And in the mid 1970s, I read about a young man in Omaha who had a very clear way of thinking about the value of companies. I felt something shift in my chest. I saved $400, Grandpa Eli said. That was real money for us at the time, $400. He looked up at me. I bought shares in a textile company called Berkshire Hathaway, and then I never sold them. Waitress set down 2 coffees and the pie. Neither of us touched anything. You never sold them, I repeated. I bought more when I could, slowly over the years, a share here, a share there, each one cost more than the last. But by then I understood that I wasn't buying a stock, I was buying a piece of something real. He wrapped both hands around his coffee mug. I never told anyone, not your grandmother, not your mother until she was older, not your father. I wasn't hiding it exactly. It just felt private, like something that would be ruined by talking about it. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and set a folded piece of paper on the table between us. I looked at it for a long moment before picking it up. It was a brokerage account statement. I had to read the number 3 times before my brain would accept it. Just over $41 million. Grandpa, I know. I know, Daniel. Set the paper down carefully as if it might dissolve. Outside, the snow was still falling. A truck pulled out of the parking lot and its red taillights disappeared into the white dark. Trust your mother set up, he said. The 300,000 your father was so upset about, that was separate, that was hers. I had nothing to do with how she got it. She saved it herself over years, quietly, the same way I did things quietly. She learned it from me. He said this with a sadness and a pride that occupied exactly the same space. Why didn't you ever? I stopped. I didn't know how to finish the question. Live differently, he shook his head. I had everything I needed. The truck runs, the house is warm, I have my workshop. He picked up his fork. Money is just a number until it does something. I've been thinking for a long time about what I want it to do. I waited. I'm 78, he said. My knees are going, my eyes, as you know, aren't what they were. He cut a neat bite of pie. I've been talking to an attorney for the past year. I'm restructuring everything. A portion will go to a foundation your mother would have liked. I'm calling it the Rose Fund, for arts education in rural schools, because she always said children in small towns deserve the same beautiful things as children in cities. He took the bite, chewed slowly, set down his fork. And the rest comes to you. I was quiet for a very long time. I don't know how to hold that, I said. No one does at first. He looked at me with those clear, patient eyes. That's why I'm telling you tonight and not giving it to you tomorrow. I want you to sit with it. I want you to feel how heavy it is before you decide what to carry and what to set down. We drove to his house in Millhaven that night. I slept in my old room, the room I had stayed in every summer as a child, with its low ceiling and the window that looked out over his backyard workshop. I lay awake for hours listening to the snow settle on the roof. I thought about my mother. About the fact that she had looked into the future and seen a scenario in which I might need protecting, and had done something practical and quiet about it. The same way she used to pack an umbrella in my bag on mornings when rain wasn't forecast, just in case. She was a woman who paid attention. I thought about my grandfather, driving his old truck to Patsy's every Sunday for 12 years, ordering 2 poached eggs, never once mentioning that he was, by any reasonable definition, a very wealthy man. What does it take to hold something like that so lightly? To let it sit in a brokerage account for 50 years without letting it change who you are? I thought about my father, standing by the fireplace, angry about a secret that had ultimately been an act of love. I felt sorry for him in a way I hadn't expected. He had spent 20 years building a life around the idea that he was the provider, the architect of stability, the man with the plan, and it turned out the woman he'd married had been quietly building a fortress around their son without telling him. That's a painful thing to learn about someone you loved. I couldn't pretend it wasn't. On Christmas morning, Grandpa Eli made us breakfast, real breakfast, the old way, with bacon from a local farm and toast from bread he'd baked the day before. We ate at his kitchen table, which he had built himself 30 years ago from oak salvaged from a demolished schoolhouse. It was the most solid table I had ever sat at. Solid in the way that things are solid when someone built them to last. What are you going to do? He asked. I don't know yet, I said. What do you think I should do? He considered this seriously, the way he considered everything. Your mother used to ask me the same thing, he said. When she was your age, when she was trying to figure out who she was and what she was for. He buttered his toast. I always told her the same thing: don't build a life around the money. Build a life you'd be proud of and then use the money to protect it. That's good advice. It's the only advice. He looked up. What do you actually want, Daniel? Not because of this, forget the number. What did you want last week before you knew? I thought about it. I want to teach, I said. I had been saying this to myself for 2 years, quietly, in the way I'd apparently inherited from my family, keeping important things close until they were ready. I'd been working at a nonprofit tutoring center in the city, underpaid and overextended, and deeply certain that I had found the right work. I want to open a school, not a fancy school. A school in a neighborhood where there isn't one that's good enough. Grandpa Eli smiled. It was the widest smile I had seen on him in years. Well, he said, and reached for his coffee. Now you can, my father called 2 days after Christmas. I let it ring twice before answering. He didn't apologize in the way people apologize in movies, cleanly, with eye contact, with a speech that resolves everything. He apologized the way real people do, haltingly with several wrong turns circling back to his own hurt before finding his way to mine. He said he had been unfair, he said he knew that. He said he didn't understand why he'd reacted that way, which I suspected wasn't entirely true but was as close as he could get right now. I should have called you on Christmas morning, he said. Yes, I said. I'm sorry, Daniel. I know, Dad. We stayed on the phone for a while after that, not saying much, the silence between us doing the work that words weren't quite ready for. There's a particular kind of wealth that has nothing to do with numbers on a brokerage statement. I watched Grandpa Eli carry it my entire life without knowing what I was watching, in the patience with which he answered every question I ever asked him, in the way he built things to last, in the Sunday morning drives and the banana cream pie and the flannel shirts and the small house in Millhaven that was full of handmade furniture and no pretense whatsoever. He had $41 million and he lived like a man who had what he needed. I think about that constantly. I think about what it means to know what you need, to have it, to not keep reaching past it. The school opens in September. We're calling it the Rosewood Academy not because it's fancy but because of my mother and because of the oak table in Grandpa Eli's kitchen and because things built from good wood last. Grandpa Eli designed the bookshelves for every classroom. He built them himself slowly over the winter and spring in his backyard workshop. I drove out every Sunday to watch. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we just listened to the radio and let the sawdust settle. Some Sundays we went to Patsy's after 2 poached eggs, scrambled eggs, 1 slice of banana cream pie, some things you don't change because they were already exactly right.